I've spent the last year getting drunk with Australian white nationalists and having coffee with Australian ISIS supporters, writing a book about Islam versus anti-Islam in this country, and that book will be out next year. And I've been asked today to pass on tips for how to tell stories. So I guess that's, how to find stories is the first tip. And I really only have one tip, which is leave the house. And, with apologies to one of the official sponsors, Google, sort of like, get off the internet and go out and you'll find that stories just cascade towards you. And I thought I'd give you an example. This happened on Monday. So just Monday this week, I rocked up to the Melbourne Magistrates Court because one of the guys that features in my book, who's part of Reclaim Australia, he was making an appearance in court on terrorism-related charges. So I turned up to the court early, and another case is being heard, and I'm just only half listening to it, but then something captures my ear. And I start messaging my friend Sophie about this case. And I say, Sophie, I'm in court awaiting a terrorism case involving a Reclaim Australia dude. Anyway, the case beforehand is about a violent man who thinks Miley Cyrus is following him and trying to attack him. What did he do? My friend Sophie asks. I say he attacked people on the streets of Melbourne CBD, punches someone in the nose, threatened another with an axe. He said he bought the axe from Bunnings to protect himself from Miley Cyrus. I like the Bunnings detail, Sophie says. Then 15 minutes later, I'm texting my friend again, OMG, he was behind me the whole time. He wasn't sitting with his lawyer, and I thought he just wasn't here. But he was seated in the rows of seats behind mine with a security officer. There's a divider between our rows of seats, so I think he's too dangerous to be in the court proper, but not dangerous enough to be behind glass or strapped to a trolley like Hannibal Lecter. And then Sophie writes back, holy shit. And then reflecting on the fact that I'm actually here for another case, she says, this is like when the support band is better than the main act. Anyway, I tell you that because I only know that story, which I think we all can agree could be turned into a top-notch courtroom drama, because instead of sitting at home and, waiting to find out about this Reclaim Australia case, I kind of just rocked up to the court. Now, I spent 10 years, 2 hours a week on Triple J with a guy called Father Bob Maguire, and I knew I had to fill those 2 hours chatting every week. So during the week, my brain was awake to stories, and once your brain is awake to stories, they're tripping over each other to reach you. Again, I'll give a small example of a story. These aren't the greatest stories in the world. It's just like things that happened to me in between being told at the end of last week that I should talk here and, whatever. So, I walk into a bottle shop because I'm going to my friend's house for dinner. This was on Saturday, and he keeps kosher. So I asked the guy at the counter if he sells kosher wines. And he says, well, that one's kosher, that one's kosher. That was meant to be kosher. And he points to a bottle that has a pig on the label. And I'm like, what do you mean that was meant to be kosher? And he tells me this story. He says this Melbourne Jewish guy who wasn't that religious, he'd set up a kosher winery, and for wines to be kosher, only religious Jews can touch the winery equipment. So he hired these religious Jews with beards, but then a non-Jewish employee who worked in the office got too close to the tank where the wine was in, and the supervising rabbi said, that's it, the wine's not kosher anymore. And the Jewish guy who ran the winery got so furious by this rabbi's decision to deem the wine not kosher that he redesigned the wine label with a pig on it and took a passive-aggressive swipe at the rabbi on the back of the label where it says, inspired by an errant footstep that went too far during our first vintage making blessed wines. Allotrop loin wines are as holy as swine. And there's so much drama in that little story and so many themes, religion versus secular, Australian, battling against the establishment, my favourite theme, revenge. And as I said, I just tell you these little stories because as soon as you're sort of like awake to things, they just kind of cascade towards you. I had a girlfriend who loved cats. and we'd walk down the street and she'd spot cats that I never would have noticed, like in the shadow under a car or up there on a windowsill. And stories are like those cats. As soon as you're interested, they're suddenly everywhere. And as soon as you become interested in a particular topic, religion is my cats, these stories just seem to appear from everywhere. But you won't spot the cats in the shadows under the cars and in the windowsills unless you leave the house.